Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raymond. I'm the co-founder of Biomind. So let me just give you a quick introduction of what we do, our mission, and then I'll go further deeper into examples of our applications used in hospitals, and then I'll keep it going. Right. So essentially, what our company do is we develop AI applications. Okay, and those are based on deep learning. Right, and deep learning in particular is very useful for medical imaging, which is also our core essence in what we are doing over here. So what we do is that we apply deep learning, we train on big data, especially images, okay, and doing so, we can help to develop certain capabilities. And using that capabilities, we further empower or assist doctors, okay, to be better in their work in terms of diagnosis or treatment. Now, essentially, the three pillars that we wanted to tackle in terms of the problem statements over here. First of all, we understand that, I think some of us will experience that it takes a long time to wait to take a scan like CT scan, MRI scan in most public hospitals. Okay, and the reasons are actually quite obvious if you look deeper into how images are being processed. And to make things worse, the level of misdiagnosis has reached its unprecedented levels. If you're talking about big countries over here, so every year, 1 year alone, we are talking about millions and millions of cases of misdiagnosis. And the question is that if we can just correct 1% of these cases, we are essentially saving like hundreds and thousands of lives in a year alone. And to make matters worse, we realize that the gap between demand and supply is worsening. So in terms of the supply of doctors, radiologists in particular, it is not increasing as fast as the amount of big data, in this case, medical images, that are required to be analyzed and report on a year-on-year basis. And it takes so long time to train one to be experienced enough, and that therefore results in the expensive hiring. And especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, we see there's a heavy backlog of imaging exams, okay, because of certain utilizations of resources. And this is what they're talking about crisis after the COVID crisis. And all this result in quite a whole range of problems: poor patient outcomes, burnout and fatigue in terms of manpower fatigue, doctors, all right? So what we do is that we combine a couple of things together. So AI is definitely a must, and we use a big collection of the data that are correctly diagnosed, meaning to say that they must have ground truth, because that is a measure of quality of data that we use to enhance the training accuracy of the results. And very importantly, the doctor's expertise and experience is important to fuse that into the machine. So here we are, we have this solution here. One of the products over here that was developed together with close to 100 brain specialists with doctors, and this is meant for doctors to use. Okay, so over here, it is interesting because what we are doing is to tackle multiple modalities here. It is able to analyze like CT scan, MRI scan, CTA scan, MRI scans simultaneously. So we not only do screening on medical images, but we also identify where the lesions are. We highlight it, we segment it, and we recommend a diagnosis before generating a report, all within seconds. And the beauty about this solution is that it is robust enough to cover a wide range of brain disorders so that you can maximize clinical use. So over here, you see things like brain tumors, micro and macro cerebral vascular diseases, and both ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke are some of the conditions that the machine can tackle at the same time. One example is that in the case of stroke use, you notice that each and every part of the whole stroke cycle, AI is relevant. Okay, and its use can be as such. For example, in the very early stage is to screen whether or not this patient is suffering from stroke, and if it is stroke, whether this is ischemic stroke or whether this is a hemorrhagic stroke. And then if let's say this is an ischemic stroke, it's important to assess the severity. So what we do here using AI is that we do something more precise than the norm using aspect scoring. So this is important because we need to allow the doctors to understand how severe is the condition. And in the case of CTA scan, which is very useful imaging that is meant to detect stenosis or aneurysm, what the AI will do is to reconstruct the major arteries, okay, such that it is better for visualization, and to deep dive into the specific location where the abnormality is. So over here, you see that the affected blood vessel is being straightened out, and then the severity can also be assessed specifically. And very importantly, at the end of the day, is to understand how much of the tissues can be salvaged. And this is when AI can come in. It can provide a smart assessment of the ischemic penumbra on CTP imaging in this case, which is important because it provides insights, to support whether certain treatment is to be used. And moving one step ahead, we are also into prognosis. And this is one of the most valuable applications that we have in hospitals. So essentially what it does is that we are able to tell the doctors whether this patient is going to have its stroke condition worsen or not. Essentially given the baseline. So let's say the patient comes today, take a scan, CT scan, the AI is going to tell the doctor over the next 24 hours whether the condition should be stable or less stable over this short period of time. And this is very essential because we're talking about an acute setting whereby even the very experienced doctors, their accuracy is only like 70%, but with AI can go to beyond 90%. Okay, so another example, very short video to show you how this can be used in a treatment space. I think the audio, you can't really hear it, but basically what it does is that we apply AI to recommend treatment for ischemic stroke. Why? Because ischemic stroke takes up like 80% of all the stroke conditions. Okay, so what we want to do here is to combine medical imaging as well as the clinical data and some of the standard so-called guidelines by WHO. So the output is something that is really interesting because what we are doing is personalized treatment over here. And based on all this family history, medical complication, we can come up with something, okay, that can help to maximize the survival rate of the patient. Okay, and when this is put into the clinical use, what we are seeing is significant gains in terms of turnaround time. The typical analysis end-to-end from scanning to analysis to report generation takes around 30 minutes. But with the use of AI, the whole turnaround time end-to-end process takes less than 3 minutes. So we are really talking about more than a 10 times gain in productivity gain, which is essentially what we are trying to tackle, which is to overcome the physician shortage. And this is the last application I wanted to introduce because of shortage of time. We perform transfer learning and we developed a COVID-19 application to handle and to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. We are early in the game because when the first outbreak started, we are already working in the Wuhan hospital to come up with this application that can not only do screening for COVID-19 pneumonia, but we can differentiate from non-COVID-19 pneumonia. So this is the future. The future is such that we can scale the solution such that it can screen and to perform a differential diagnosis of a wide range of pneumonia, not limited to COVID-19. And that includes things like SARS and the common type A, type B influenza, TB, etc. And just 2 months ago, we are also being awarded during the World AI Conference, WAIC, that was held in Shanghai. There was a public competitive evaluation of our performance against other AI companies, and we won it. And we are also being awarded for our contribution in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. We are also being mentioned in some media, and we realized that the common denominator is that when our AI is coupled with the doctor's intelligence, we call it a combined intelligence, this is going to significantly enhance the workflow, the diagnostic, as well as the prognosis accuracy that either the machine or the human doctor would act alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond. Can I have James from eko.ai, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. So eko.ai was our old name. We actually just rebranded, and we're now called Us2AI. And Us2AI's mission, we are using machine learning to automate the fight against cardiovascular disease. And unfortunately, this is a huge fight. The sad reality is that 1 in 3 of us on this call today will die of cardiovascular disease. Now, what doctors traditionally use when they have any doubts, as most people in the audience know, doubts about the heart, they will use echocardiography. It's the cardiovascular doctor, the cardiologist tool of choice. The problem is that echo is slow. It takes about a half an hour to acquire the images and another half an hour to analyze the images. It's difficult given all of the multiple angles and videos that are taken. It's error prone because there's up to 21% of variability in trained cardiologists, and it's expensive. So our approach was to develop a software tool that took this 30-minute, 250-click process and turned it into something that's 2 minutes and 1 click. It's a process or workflow that we've recently gotten a patent on in the US. And since a picture is worth 1,000 words, I'll show you, hopefully show you what it's like. Okay, so what you're about to see is under the hood. So this is not what you see, but what's happening under the hood is we're ingesting videos, we're chopping the videos up into frames, we're automatically determining the cardiac cycle, in systole, in diastole, measuring every chamber of every frame of every video, which in turn generates hundreds of measurements, order of magnitude more than what's typically done clinically. So what you see, what a clinician sees, is basically this, a search tool. There's simple search criteria or more advanced search criteria that you search for your patient, you click and go straight to a report because all of the work has been done behind the scenes already. So you can sort of get a quick video of what the annotations are done, a report. We do both 2D and Doppler measurements, as you can see there. Our measurements, you can sort of hover over them to get a quick preview, see how your values compare to international reference guidelines. And then if you have any doubts, you just click and go straight to a measurement page. All of our annotations, which are done automatically, can be adjusted by you if you have any doubts. Because we do so many measurements, you can actually pick which one you want to send to the report. And that's sort of the core of our tool. Because we were lucky enough to work with a number of partners around the world, we've been able to develop a federated learning platform. So this is something that allows, because as we all know, everyone's considers their data extremely precious, and no one wants it to leave their premises. We developed a way to connect data across geographies so that our algorithms can jump from location to location, cohort to cohort, while all data remains on premises. This has allowed us to engage in clinical trials that cannot be done in the real world, if you will, because data is never allowed to leave a premise. That in turn has allowed us to access multiple markets. So when we started the company, we focused on the column on the right, which is just the diagnostics market with our decision support tool. And we're in the process now of getting FDA approval. We hope to obtain that in Q1 of next year. Our software is being validated as we speak in Boston at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. But what we're doing already today is selling our software and services as research tools to pharmaceutical companies. We've closed deals with AstraZeneca, Bayer, Roche, Johnson & Johnson, and more on the way. And this has enabled a very large and attractive market for our software and services. I did want to give you a heads up on what's coming, something that's accelerated during these COVID times, which is pairing our software with point of care tools. So there's this wonderful generation of new hardware that's coming out now, where instead of that big clunky echo machine that you saw on my earlier slide, now you can take echo probes and plug them into a Samsung device or your iPhone or a laptop here. So I'm not going to show you this whole video. I'll just give you a quick preview of it. But this guy who's bared his chest for us is actually one of our interns. He couldn't even find his heart before joining us. And here he is sort of acquiring 3 of the core views that you need. He's given guidance on when the view is in the correct imaging window. He's given a quick check. So he's just obtained, and this is real time by the way, he's just obtained a peristernal long axis. Right now he's going for the apical 4 chamber. We're telling him to hold still so that he can get the right image. And we're classifying it. We're telling him, yes, this is the correct view. Once you get a green check, we then send that video off to be measured. So he's now getting, okay, I can't resist. I'm gonna let you see the whole video. It's gonna end shortly. But he's just acquired the A4C, you see the check. Now he's just acquired the A2C. And just like that, he can go and view the report. So this is like the traditional report that we've just shown. Okay, now I'll skip it. But this is basically the same software as I showed you earlier, but done by a complete novice using a handheld device. For me, it blows my mind. Okay, so anyway, we were able to do all of this with the fantastic support that we've had from multiple institutions here in Singapore. We work very closely with BII, IHBC, and I2R We were an A-Star spinoff. The platform, we were built upon a cardiovascular research platform across Asia, and we've worked with partners around the world. In addition, we've been able to have fantastic financial support, both from A-Star as well as Sequoia and EDBI. This is kind of the who's who on the team, and we've had a good run. We've been able to win a number of tough awards, and that has helped us to sort of, give us a lot of momentum in our development. And that's us. That's a quick intro to us to AI. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you so much, James. And now we have Professor Jong Hyo from ClariPi.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jong Hyo from ClariPi. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Hope now everyone see my screen. The ClariPi is an AI-based CT denoising solution company, and our motto is to bring the dream of harmless CT imaging into reality. ClariPi is based on Seoul, South Korea. Here, and we are a 5-year-old company. We from the beginning we focus developing developing the world's best technology in the field of low-dose CT denoising. And our aim is to develop a innovative solution to cut the CT radiation dose down to 1/10 level of routine practice. Currently, we have 20 members, and our product was approved by FDA and CE. We debuted at RSNA, participating in the AI showcase, and we got a good attraction there. The RSNA newspaper and Anthony magazine introduced us favorably, and the many people, including the head of GE CT business unit, visited us and discussed about future collaboration. Our major product, ClariCity AI, is the most awaited AI-powered image wisely solution. All the CT companies have developed many CT denoising solutions over the last decade, but to be honest, the technical advancement was only marginal, and the CT radiation dose remains as the significant health risk. That's why we introduced our product, and the ClariCity AI is an innovative AI-based solution that resolves the CT radiation dose problem quickly and smoothly, and helps to cut the radiation dose down to the virtually harmless level. The CT radiation is a global health hazard issue. The over 250 million CT exams are performed a year, and the CT radiation gives damage to cell DNA, and consequently causes cancer increase. Therefore, the global organizations such as WHO, IAEA, as well as the EU and USA are placing strict regulations for the safe use of CT in medical centers. But we are proud to say that our product, ClariPi AI, is an innovative solution and disruptive technology solving this challenge in the real world. Like here, you are seeing an abdominal CT at the center. The slide is the scan at the 1/10 of the routine radiation dose level. Obviously, the image is too noisy to read, but after applying our product, ClariPi AI, you see very clear image that is comfort to read. And radiologists at SNU Hospital gave us a good remark, saying it's a world best performance like I've never seen before. And we are sure that our technology can lead the future CT market. This is a real-world workflow. Our product is running on a standard PC connected to hospital network. And as soon as the CT scan was completed, the noisy low-dose image is sent to our product, and our AI engine removes noise in real time and send the noise clear high-quality images to PACS system for the radiologist interpretation. I'll show you a couple of example cases. Here you see left side, very noisy, low-dose chest scan. The noise amount over 270, very strong, and it covers whole lung field. You cannot see much about the patient condition with these noise images, but after processing with ClariPi AI, 80% of noise was removed and images was made clean and of high quality. What you see at the center of the slide is the noise component image separated by our AI. You can see that our AI engine can very accurately separate noise component only, not touching any anatomical structures. So that explains why our product is able to produce very clean, high-quality images from these noisy, low-dose images. And this is a comparison of coronal cut images before and after processing. Now, at the top of lung area, you see a lesion that's emphysema. You can see clearly after the ClariPi AI processing, but it's hard to see the original FVP images. And we envision that our product will be soon used not only for the doctors, but also for the AI products. For example, by combining with our product, the existing AI solutions can extend its use to the ultra low CT scans. The left side, you see the COVID-19 CT solutions. All the existing CT AI solutions are trained with high quality, high dose images. But when the patient goes through the repeated scan, the radiation dose becomes a problem. So when the solutions is combined with our product, it can be a good synergistic effect. The other AI-based solutions like lung cancer screening, cardiac report, and even the hemorrhage detection, stroke detection solutions based on a CT scan can benefit, have a benefit by combining with our technology. This is our website image. Again, our vision is to bring dream of harmless CT imaging into reality, so that both healthcare professionals and patients can benefit, enjoy the benefit of cutting-edge medical imaging technology, free from radiation hazard concern. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'll pass this on to Louisa to take over.
Thanks, Sukma. Thanks, Sukma. Thanks, Raymond, James, and Professor Jong for sharing all about your respective companies. We'll begin the panel session now. We already have a few questions coming in. Please feel free to use the Q&A section to type in your questions and we'll address them. We currently have 2 questions. I'll get to that, but I think a leading on question for that would be for all of 3 of you to answer. So what are some of the challenges AI solutions face when it comes to adoption and the regulatory process in Singapore or the respective markets that you're operating in? And how does that, and a 2-part question, how does that impact scalability and reach? So maybe Raymond, you'd like to start first? I think you've answered one of the questions already.
Oh yes, okay, right. So because our solution is a medical device, and in different parts of the world, they actually have a different classification in terms of the risk level. And even for those markets where we already have certifications, there's also some discussions to reclassify as part of the ongoing evolving process in dealing with such disruptive technologies. Now, just to give you an example, in different parts of the world, in China, for instance, the CFDA, now it's relabeled as an MPA. Our solution is classified as class 3. Why? Because it can actually directly intervene and to assist in diagnosis. Because it is not just used for a simple analytics like a CAT software. Now, given a higher risk, and therefore the classification would be higher. But in some parts of the world, they deem it as a class 2 rather than a class 3, because the fact that our solution is not going to replace doctors would mean that it is sufficient to be in a class 2. So what I'm trying to say is basically is that in order for medical device company like us to sell or to commercialize our products, it definitely must have had certification from the health authorities. And that is important because, as part of the risk management, patient management, what regulators will want to see is sufficient evidence to prove that although the efficacy is high, but it should not compromise in terms of the safety of the patient. And that's the reason why, the process is quite robust. Of course, in certain countries, like I think India is one of them, in terms of the recognition of such technologies may not be as matured as compared to the rest of the developed nations. So they do, consider certain transition phase, okay, whereby they take on a more observational approach, during the transition before the system gets more mature. Whereas in the very developed places like in Europe, now that we all know that there's a transition from MDD to MDR directives. So that means that it's actually quite a nightmare, okay? Because in the past, we might be very familiar with certain processes. So for us, because we start from scratch, we start from nothing, we have to hire consultants to engage and to assist, in this advisory approach. But when there is such a high level change, a new directive is being formulated, being implemented, even sometimes the consultants, they themselves are not very familiar. And that becomes a mutual hand-holding journey, whereby there's learning between our companies like us, regulators, and consultants. Okay, and I think this approach will likely to be continued, especially when it comes to such new technologies that can actually be a game changer. All right, and because of that, it means that for companies like us, we have to invest in many kinds of resources, regulatory affairs, the expertise, not just a technical point of view, but having to understand the landscape, having to study the policies change, being fast-sighted and forward-going, and actively engage the regulators so that they know what we are doing and vice versa. It's important to move forward. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Raymond. James, what about yourself? What are your opinions on this?
Sure. So for us, our regulatory strategy is we're actually going for FDA and CE mark now simultaneously, with China, the CFDA coming right behind that, and then the HSA here in Singapore. So doctors are not yet using our tools here locally. As far as challenges, so I echo what Raymond said. There is a very robust process to validate what we're doing. For us, it's actually a unique thing. So when doctors do echo measurements, as I said in my speech, there's a known variability, right? And so what we have to do to pass our FDA hurdle, which will be replicated in Europe, is take 3 humans who will all come up with 3 different measurements for a cohort of studies, and then we have to run Echo or S2AI software and fall within that variation. So it's a really interesting. It's called an IEC metric that we have to, and a very high hurdle, because the 3 humans that we use are expertly trained people. So the burden is very high, but it's fine. I understand it and we'll pass it. What I have a harder time getting my head around, though, is that so when we release our software, we basically have to lock it, right, and send it out. And that's the way it is. And there's a process now in the FDA to consider ways to allow AI algorithms to continue updating themselves and be approved. But you have to understand that for a software guy like me with software, we do 2 different iterations a day of our algorithms. So freezing something that's, if I froze something a week ago, is already something very stale to me, much less considering freezing it on the market. So that's something where the FDA is very open-minded. They understand the software moves very quickly, and it's in everybody's advantage to allow it to be updated and improved. So it'll work itself out, but today it's still a challenge.
Okay, thanks for that. So I think that kind of answers a little bit of the questions on adoption. Professor Jong, anything from your end? Is there any adoption in Singapore or other countries?
Actually, we fortunately passed the FDA hurdle and also obtained the CE mark. So we began to go into the markets in the Korea first, and US and European countries, Singapore as well. So we are at the stage of knocking the market. And what we found is the passing the regulatory hurdle is just one step. And the second step is to get the payment, to give some incentive to the buyers. That the buyers recognize the value of our products. The images is the images gives the thousands of words, just showing the clear images shows good impression. But the second question is, what incentive do I get after buying your product? So I think that the adoption of AI products in the market needs the second step of approval, that reimbursement agency.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this links very well into one of the questions that one of our participants have asked. Jia, thanks for this question. Beyond regulatory clearance, commercialization of business model for AI tools may face hurdles from getting reimbursement and cooperating into clinical guidelines? What are the strategies you plan to moving forward? I completely agree with that. Do you think that it is more education required, more government support? What do you think will be the key hurdles that you guys will have to overcome, and what are the strategies that you plan to employ?
I'm happy to start.
Yes, sure. Thanks, James.
So, yes, very, very important questions. And so getting clinical acceptance is going to be a challenge for sure. Our strategy to go about that is twofold. One is publications. So publishing our solution, having people using our solutions and publishing on it in reputable journals. It's one of our key goals, and we're shooting for as high as we can possibly reach publication by the end of this year. In addition, one strategy that we're taking is trying to evangelize the key thought leaders in this market. You know, there's sort of in the echo core lab market, there clearly is a who's who of people who sort of run the biggest trials. They speak at the major conferences, et cetera. And we've worked very hard to try to, frankly, work with these people from the beginning, because they all recognize the desperate need for this software. They all want to see it. And they want to see something that's of high quality use. So, you know, we've been working with these people, and we want them to, once we actually get regulatory approval, use it in their labs, talk about it at the conference, and basically evangelize us to the world.
Raymond, anything?
Sure. So,
thanks, James.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, I was looking at the questions, the Q&A. So in a way, I was dazzled by all the questions. Very interesting questions. And yeah, so for reimbursement-related issues has always been a very active discussion. And I think it's very important that the whole gist about technology adoption has to be a pull approach. Cannot be a push approach whereby, you know, you insist that, hey, let's use this solution, good for you, and then things will autopilot on its own. It doesn't work that way. And in particular, I think there are certain leaders in different parts of the world. For instance, in the case of the UK, they are very active in trying to establish certain standards related to artificial intelligence. So I think NICE, they are trying to form a standard, and they have a committee to look at it. And I think one of the very important pull, or rather the need, has to be driven by the country by itself, because, you know, it's the fact that UK, they have always been trying to outsource their data across boundaries. So for example, they even outsource to India through teleradiology as a way to assuage the heavy demand on the, you know, the existing pool of doctors. So because of this driving force, all right, naturally, I think the government understood that in order to further raise or rather to encourage adoption, first of all, they are very open to foreign technology, be it from Singapore, you know, and so on and so forth. They welcome all sorts of technologies coming in, even at a more mature state, okay, because generally speaking, for the NICE standard formation, they are looking at companies who have already gotten the CE mark. And anyway, because of the Brexit, they are now trying to establish a new standard, UKFCA. So they're even encouraging for CE certified companies to embark on that the path, right? So that it can be customized and localized to the local needs. So James actually touched on the part whereby the clinical evidence generation is important, and in particular, they will want to see it, you know, the evidence to be generated within their own demographics, their own population. So this is where the KOLs are important, all right, especially those hospitals or those NHS trusts, they are really plugged into that, you know, ecosystem. And these are the right organizations to approach, okay? And that would be a shortcut, I believe, you know, to get into this so-called standard. And once there is a standard, it's like the leader, you know, in that particular space based on specialization, right? For us, we want to be a leader in the brain. So naturally, when it comes to the next step of the reimbursement strategy, it has to be closely, you know, tied back to, you know, the guidance of the NICE standard. Okay, and I think for some countries, they are also trying to follow suit based on the guidelines that they established. It's open source anyway, so everyone can see it. the kind of a questions is really, really robust. The kind of questions is really, really no quick answer. Okay, the kind of comparison with and without the intervention of AI is very realistic and clinical in nature. So this is exactly how the design of the AI product should be in the first place. Because if we were to design out of technology push approach, it's very hard to redesign it such that it can be optimized to the workflow in a clinical setting.
Actually, Raymond, sorry, can I interrupt you right there? Because that what you're talking about, it links to one of the questions that are being asked. How is the adoption of Biomind solution in Singapore? Because it's a homegrown solution, do you think that the local market, with the support of KOLs, etc., do you think that the local market is open to these kind of local solutions that are being pushed out right now?
Okay, Singapore is a very small market, so I think that has been a fact, and it is good for test bedding, good for performing trials, obtaining HSA and reference centers and this. But we talk about the adoption driver, right? As I mentioned earlier in my slides, very importantly is that when we talk about overcoming some of the pain points, first of all, there must be the pain must be strong enough. Okay, but the thing about having a small population is that it is not difficult to find physicians, find good doctors, so long as the organization can pay for it. It is also not too difficult to homogenize a good enough medical standard across hospitals in small countries. But where we are more interested in is basically big countries like China, India, Europe, whereby there are different tiers of hospitals. And we're talking about how can we help patients not being attracted by the reputation of the good hospitals in the cities and therefore having to travel all the way there, only to find out that they have to stay in a hotel for close to 2 weeks to get a queue, to get a number to be administered, right? But we're talking about decentralizing our solution by deploying and scaling our solution to the faraway cities, province, etc., so that they can receive, very good medical standards even near their home ground, near where they stay. Okay, so I think for big countries, for us with a limited resource, limited time, we want to focus on this market, and therefore, investing the kind of energy and money, to get ourselves to be known by the government to form a standard in those countries, we have a higher ROI.
Thanks for that, Raymond. Professor Jong, any comments from you on this regard?
Yeah, I think the first step is to make a committee with some government agencies, people, and clinical the experts and AI companies. We have an experience in Korea. It took 1 year to make such a committee, and we discuss lots of debate how to make a good guideline to persuade the government agencies, such as reimbursement agency, so that they, with such a good guideline, they agree to give the reimbursement. And although at first it very small door, it's with very strict restrictions, strict criteria. But once the door is open, then some good example occurs. We are waiting after last year's December, we created such a guideline. We are waiting whether any AI company can pass through that and get reimbursement, but not yet in Korea.
Thanks, Professor Jong. Now, sorry, I'm just conscious of time right now. We'll move on to another topic. I think that this is a very important. This is a very important topic. So, one of the attendees asked on mental health: is AI used in coordination with the neurosciences and brain imaging technologies can we approach crisis detection as we do predictive maintenance on machines? James, Raymond, would you like to give this a go?
If you said mental health, it's not really our.
Okay.
Okay,
Raymond?
so yeah, right. So I mean, a lot of elderly related conditions, Parkinson's, epilepsy, and so forth, unfortunately, it's still in the research stage. Okay, and where we are coming from basically is that because what we want to do eventually is to be able to cross-pollinate our technologies to treatment. Okay, so what we are actually doing is to even study the genetics, the genes of brain patients, and map it across brain imaging, clinical data, the genes, as well as the actual conditions that they are suffering from. But it's a very complicated process, okay, because things like, for example, ethics, getting approval, and eventually when neuroscience is involved, we're talking about multidisciplinary approach. Okay, but I think in terms of research, a lot of companies are focusing on epilepsy, by studying, say, for example, the seizure signs. For now, it's in our pipeline, so nothing much to comment on it. But I believe, there's a lot of publications, although still in the research stage, talking about epilepsy. From where we are coming from, basically in the treatment arena, there are at least 3 pillars we are looking at. Okay, so one of them is the surgery, radiotherapy. So this kind of a treatment is something that we are already using medical imaging to facilitate the process for more personalized treatment. Take, for example, in the case of radiotherapy, how can the radiation avoid the healthy tissues? If not, it will cause collateral damage, right, or side effects. And then all the way to swinging to the other pendulum is the rehabilitation part of things, which is actually, I think, is very useful for patients suffering from brain disorders, epilepsy, brain damage, and all these things, traumatic brain injuries, whereby what we can do is to track the activity, the movement, the brain imaging when the person is currently, or rather live, performing certain movement. So we can actually optimize the best path such that this can help to refine the rehabilitation exercise such that it is targeted at certain, impaired brain activity or certain parts of the brain that is impaired. So that particular exercise can actually be reinforced to strengthen that portion. So this is one we talk about personalized treatment or rehabilitation in this space.
Okay, great. Thanks, Raymond. I hope that answered your question. So I think the next question I want to address twofold, and it also incorporates Sergio's question there. So the first question is, what are some of the upcoming AI technologies and platforms in healthcare diagnostics, be it regarding to your respective solutions or not? And the second part is, where do you see these opportunities addressing some of the problems in emerging markets, particularly within the region? So maybe James, you can go first.
Sure. So for us, the most interesting one is the one I highlighted in my video, which was point of care, sort of taking an ultrasound probe, plugging it into your phone and using that. And for us, this is amazing because, one of the problems of echocardiography and getting access to just knowing your heart health is there's this bottleneck of availability to just get your heart imaged. There are regions like the UK, for example, where they're at capacity. They cannot even follow their own national guidelines in terms of when you should get an ultrasound image. So we're actually doing, we're in Q1, we're going to try to do a trial both in the UK and here in Singapore of providing first nurses in a protected environment access to both a mobile solution and the normal solution. And we'll compare the results. We'll compare the time it takes to acquire. Of course, our solution will be much faster. That's the easy win, but the harder win is, do they deliver comparable results? And it's interesting. So we don't look at it as just, our challenges are not a region.
Sorry, I think we might have I think we might have lost James a little bit there. Perhaps we'll wait for him to join back in later. Raymond, Professor Jong, would you like to chip in with your thoughts on this matter? What are some of the upcoming opportunities and how is that applicable to some of the solutions within the region?
Yeah, not only for Singapore region, but I see the opportunity in AI business is to make a combined product. You know, what I found is a company develops a good product, good solution, but in clinical reality, the expectation is quite broad. So not a single product and solution can meet the expectation and the clinical need. But the buyers cannot buy everything, cannot test everything. Even though they buy a couple of different products, it's very difficult to combine those products and make it work seamlessly in the clinical workflow. So that's where it comes the need of the platform, AI platform approach. And then there are a couple of platform companies, and I think the combined that platform companies allows easy combination of different AI products, like our solution and Biomind's COVID, Biomind's stroke solutions, like that. So I think that is good approach to meet the high expectations of clinical users.
Wonderful, great answer. Thanks, Professor Jong. James, we lost you there. Welcome back. Do you want to finish off that sentence before we let Raymond go ahead?
I'd actually just finished.
Okay. Raymond, on to you then.
Okay, cool. So I think this uncertain times during COVID, lots of things are happening out there. And clearly there is, I think in my earlier slides I was talking about, crisis after crisis, right? So the backlog, problem has never been so poignant. Okay, we are seeing, there's a lot of demand for teleradiology companies, and they have approached us, how they can further, complement their part-time, radiologists, this kind of things, so that they can help their clients better. Within the hospital settings in Asia Pacific in general, I think in general doctors are really, really busy. My meetings with them is like wee hours in the morning, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., it's really that exaggerated on some occasions. And what I felt is that perhaps, with such limited resources, it should be best spent on patients who really need it urgently. Okay, so I think for applications or solutions that are relevant to acute setting is really important. So triaging is one of the many useful applications that we see of great demand, because it means that in acute setting, the analysis is already out. The flagging, the alerts already, being known to doctors before they even enter the consultation room, for diagnosis. So this is exactly what I think triaging is all about, because it ensures that given the limited time, given the limited supply of doctors who are really looking at non-COVID cases, that is essentially what I meant by immediate response to the most deserving patients. Of course, if you talk about the other spectrum, all right, we're talking about blue sky research, or maybe higher readiness would be in the space of genetics. Okay, how genetics can be fused with other kinds of data, all right, to make sure that the personalization can go to the ultimate level to to trace all the way back to its genes. So this is one very, I think it's a worth time should be spent in this area, because different demographics around the world can have different prognosis outcomes. So in Southeast Asia, with such a big population, Indonesia, these big countries, I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities to tap into. And I think getting access to data should not be a problem. We've seen like how James mentioned about his federated platform to ensure the safety, the privacy of patients are intact without even data leaving the hospitals. And I'm sure, with technologies or scientists coming in with the kind of clinical expertise, joining forces hand in hand is something, mid-term solution, long-term solution is something that they should expect as part of the outcome of the collaboration. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Well, we only have 1 minute left, so I think we will, thanks Raymond, I think we'll just wrap up. The last question that I have for all of you, maybe James, you could go first, is there's one key takeaway that you'd like everyone to hold from this webinar. What would it be?
Just to hang on to your seats. I think what I see happening in AI is just impressive, and it scales so rapidly. So as impressive as what all of my peers here today of what we've been able to produce, it's just going to get even better very rapidly.
Thanks, James. Professor Jong, one takeaway from you.
Oh,
it's on mute.
Sorry, Professor Jong, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. My message is to keep open-minded and keep your eye on the rapid development of the AI technology. I think AI is a driving force of a new wave of new generation medical healthcare technologies. So together, the government agencies, professionals, and companies can work together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for that. Raymond, from you?
Right. So I think 3 years ago, the concept of AI is still at a conceptual level, but this period of time, people are looking more into the adoption. Okay, and I think it's a multi-stakeholders problem. And I think one of the ways to be successful is to really understand and to engage all the stakeholders, understand what are the roadblocks, the challenges, and this is a key ingredient to successful adoption.
Wonderful. That's a great ending. Thanks, Raymond. I guess we can all hang on to our seats and see how that goes. So thanks everyone for participating. If you'd like to reach out to any of our panelists, please reach out to Uma or Azra from Catalyst, and I'm sure you get them the contacts. Unless we do have their contact details in the slides. No, okay, we don't, I believe. But please scan the feedback form as well. Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you have a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, panelists.
Bye-bye. Sure.
Bye.